When you think about the most dominant teams in RLCS history, you probably think about teams like Gale Force / Dignitas, or even a more recent version of Vitality. But today, I wanted to look at the most dominant team within a split. So, and specifically, I want to explain what I think Karmine Corp, the most recent variation in the Birmingham split, had the most dominant split of all time. The system ground rules, we're only going to look at teams that finished first in their region and first at the RLCS LAN event as well. Though there is an exception for Cloud9 because I do want to look at their results as well. The teams we're going to be looking at are Flipside Tactics from Season 2, which is Kuxer, Garizi, and Marky Duda. Karmine Corp 2025 Split 1, which is Vatira, Atow, and dralii. NRG Season 8, which is Turbo Pulsar, Garrett G, and Justin. Team Vitality Season 7, which is Scrubkilla, Fairy Peak, and K-Dop. Karmine Corp 22-23 Winter, Exotic, Itachi, and Vatira. Dignitas Season 5, which is Turbo Pulsar, K-Dop, and Violet Panda. Same thing for Gale Force Season 4. Then Cloud9 Season 6, which is Gimmick, Torment, and Squishy Muffins. Gen.G 22-23 Fall, which is Nolly, Chronic, and apparently Jack. Team Vitality 22-23 Spring, plus Worlds. I'm counting Worlds for them here just because people are going to always mention, oh, but Vitality won Worlds straight after the major as well, so I'm just gonna give them the benefit of the doubt here. But that roster is Alpha 54, Radosin, and Zen, and then G2 24 Split 2, which is Atomic, Daniel, and Beast Mode. So for our initial research, what I did is I looked at best of 7 results against top 4 opposition both regionally and internationally. So for example, in Regional 1, if you win against a team that finished top 4 in that event in a best of 7, we look at that result. And in the majors, or rather at RLCS LANs, if you win a best of 7 against a team that finished top 4 in that event, then we also look at those results. So here we have our results. Initially, we can already tell that there's a big difference between teams before free-to-play and after. We can really see that, they play a lot less series, right? When comparatively to the more modern teams, they play a lot more. So it's really hard to compare, game rate, series win rate, goals rate. They can all be a little bit mickey. Mainly, I'm looking at series win rate. That one especially is very, very mickey. If you only play 5 series, you can easily go 5-0, right? I'm not saying easily, but like, you can have a one good run, right, and that'll really make your stats look really good. But regardless, the top teams we have for game win rate are Flipside Tactics and Karmine Corp. Then for series win rate, which I already mentioned, is probably the worst stat here, to at least compare in between pre-free to play and after. For pre-free to play, the top teams are Flipside Tactics, NRG, Team Vitality, Dignitas, and Gale Force. And after free to play, it's Karmine Corp and Vitality. So then for goals rate, which I think is a really important stat, if you didn't know what it is, it's basically, when you look at the games, what percentage of the goals are being scored by your team, right? So for example, here for Flipside Tactics, that's 65.96%, which it really gives you a detailed look of by how many goals they're winning, or not really by how many goals, but you can see how dominant they are in the games that they're playing, right? And as well, it's a little bit less mickey than series win rate. As I would say, game win rate and goals rate are definitely the two best stats to look at here. And then I forgot to mention the top teams here are Flipside Tactics, Karmine Corp, and, well, another Karmine Corp in second and third, respectively. And then for average placement, what it is basically just looking at where you place on average, looking at all the events. And for teams free to play, what we're doing is we're also taking into account league play as a separate event from playoffs. I do think there's quite some value in winning league play, considering the amount of series you play there in comparison to playoffs. And the top teams here are NRG, both Team Vitalities, Dignitas, 2 Karmine Corps, both Karmine Corps, and G2. My main takeaways from these stats are probably the main contenders for the most dominant split of all time would probably be, based on these stats alone, I would probably say Team Vitality 22-23 Spring plus Worlds, Karmine Corp 2025 Split 1, and Flipside Tactics Season 2. But, you know, this system is obviously flawed. You know, we're not really looking at a lot of the losses that they're taking because we're only looking at those best of 7 wins, especially, you know, before free to play. There were a lot of best of 5s that were really important series. So, you know, if you lost in those, or just simply haven't looked at them. So, for a team like Flipside Tactics, I do think they've been very much nice here. There's just not really a coincidence, but they did just kind of happen to win, you know, the series once they got to a best of 7, but then before, struggle a lot more. And I do think there's a lot of value in you know, dominating throughout the season, right? Not just, you know, those the little best of 7s that you play. And considering the lack of amount of best of 7s that we can look at for those teams, like a Flipside Tactics, you know, there's clearly a lot of information that we're missing out on, and it does look a little bit mickey. But to prove that, we have to look in much more detail. So what we're going to do now, and I'm not going to explain it fully because I've already done the research, and it could be a little bit complicated to explain, but from a broader perspective, let's just say in simpler terms that we're just going to look at results other than best of 7s. We're going to now include best of 5s again at top 4 opposition. A little edit here, I should probably preface that we're also looking at some results against the top 6, not just the top 4, but I'm not going to go in too much detail there. But just, you know, it's not just as simple as did they finish top 4 in that event. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but I won't really explain in detail. For the event that you played in, now we're going to also include, you know, league play series, because those were all best of 5, right? For the teams pre-free to play. Yeah, this will give us a much better idea of how the teams are doing. We're also going to take into account a lot of the losses that teams take, you know, not just looking at the wins or matches against the top teams, but also the losses that you're taking against the lesser teams. So, you know, we're really taking into account the low floors that teams can have as well. So then after doing all this research, the details we found here are actually game changing. Here for game rate, we've got Karmine Corp in first place by quite a margin. Second place, Flipside Tactics. In series win rate, like I said, not as important as you know, game win rate and goals rate. A little bit mickey, though they do have more than Team Vitality, and they have the same series played, although those two have played a lot more series than everyone else. But yeah, I should preface Karmine Corp first there, Energy second, Team Vitality third, then goals rate. We have Karmine Corp again first, again by quite a margin, Energy second, and Cloud9 in third place for that. And I would say, you know, based on all those details, Karmine Corp definitely looked like the most dominant team, though I should also mention that for average placement, Karmine Corp, they did lose one regional, whereas, you know, Vitality, they didn't lose a regional. And on top of that, for those who are taking Worlds into account here, Team Vitality, they won 5 events, right? Whereas Karmine Corp, they only won 3. Though we're only counting, you know, up to 4 for them, and Vitality were counting the extra World Championship that they played within that time frame. So a little bit different, but point is, Karmine Corp lost at some point, whereas Team Vitality just simply did not, right? They just didn't lose an event. They lost series and games, but they didn't lose an event. And Karmine Corp, even though they won more games and more series and scored more goals, or larger percentages of the goals, they did lose one event, that one grand final against Geek Esports, which I did make a video about, by the way, if you want to check that out. Link in the description. But regardless, if you want to make that argument where average placement is the only thing that matters, you can definitely make an argument for that. You know, Team Vitality being the main contender there, I would say, you know, if you're basing it off that, I would definitely say Team Vitality, most dominant team in history. But, and that's definitely fair. You probably could be right. I think I'd be willing to say that you are right, but I really wanted to make a video talking about how dominant Karmine have been. I guess not in a traditional way of just, you know, who's the winniest team of any split ever, but they have been the most dominant in the games that they have won, which, to be fair, have been all, you know, but you know, one series, right? They've only lost that one series in the Birmingham split against Geek, and in the games that they won, they were clearly the best ever, right? They were the most dominant team ever. So, you know, definitely Karmine Corp and Team Vitality, the 2 top teams for that. In my opinion, I'm more interested in, you know, Karmine Corp's domination, but if you want to go with Team Vitality, I mean, I think they're both completely valid picks, considering Team Vitality, they didn't lose. You know, some other good potential picks you could go for, because they also didn't lose, but you know, the other statistics don't look quite as well, or NRG, Team Vitality, and Dignitas. Another Team Vitality, I mean, the Season 7 one. Team Vitality, Dignitas, I wouldn't say they're as good of a pick as, for example, an NRG. You could also argue Gale Force might be a good pick because of how dominant they were, at their World Championship. Even though they did go to a Game 7, the Grand Final was really dominant. Though, in the larger picture, clearly they're not, one of the top picks. They're just one you can mention. But specifically, I should talk about NRG Season 8. Because we can kind of compare them to Team Vitality, because they have better statistics in terms of series win rate and goals rate than them. Only the game win rate, Team Vitality have a slight edge over, though it is very smaller difference than with series win rate and goals rate, which are in favor of NRG. So you might be asking yourself, so why are Team Vitality more dominant than NRG then? Because clearly their statistics are quite comparable. What I will say about that is I would go with Team Vitality in comparison to NRG Season 8 because Team Vitality's major was a lot more dominant than NRG's World Championship, right? Because NRG's World Championship, against their top opposition, they went 3-2 and 4-3 against, that Vitality in that season, right? So it didn't really feel like they were that much better than everyone, even though maybe in the other series they were a lot more confident and dominant. Against Vitality, they weren't that much better. So I do think that because the more modern Team Vitality of 22-23, because they won so convincingly even in the grand finals, I would definitely give them the edge over NRG in terms of the teams that have the average placement of always finishing first. NRG, they finished first in league playoffs and at the World Championship, so they didn't lose an event either. So there you go. Karmine Corp or Team Vitality is your answer. You can go with whatever floats your boat based on this video. If you go for anything else, I mean, I'm willing to have a conversation about it, but to be honest with you, I don't really think there's a way you can argue that anyone but those two teams are the most dominant in history. Of course, we're just talking about in one split, right? In a little bubble. But yeah, I don't think for anyone else you can really make an argument. In terms of, I guess, some of the other BDSs that have won events, what they would do is win a split, then they would have the major, do terrible at the major, and then win the World Championship, right? Which, ultimately, looking at those stats together, they do not look great. They don't look that dominant, considering, how badly they did at those majors right before the World Championship. So if you're wondering where's a BDS that won a World Championship, that's the reason they're not here. But yeah, I guess that's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later.